Once upon a time, in a peaceful Igbo community, there lived a young girl named Akwuudo. Her life was one of joy and contentment, surrounded by the love of her parents and two younger siblings. They were a close-knit family, bound by laughter, shared stories, and dreams of a bright future. Akwuudo was the pride of her parents, excelling in school and driven by a deep desire to achieve great things. She attended one of the best schools in the region, and their parents made sure that they were provided with every opportunity life had to offer. Akwuudo had just completed her final year exams in college, her heart full of hope and excitement for the future. Her plans were clear: to continue her education at the university, to become someone her family and community could be proud of. Her siblings too had their dreams, and their parents always encouraged them, believing in their children's potential. But as the sun was shining brightest on their lives, a storm of unimaginable sorrow swept in. Akwuudo's parents were involved in a tragic accident on their way back from a journey, and neither of them survived. The news hit the family like a thunderclap. Akwuudo's world shattered in an instant as the people who had been the center of her universe were suddenly gone. The days leading up to the funeral were a blur of tears and confusion. Akwuudo, now thrust into a position she could never imagine, had to shoulder the responsibility of caring for her younger siblings, who were equally heartbroken. They held on to one another, seeking comfort in their shared grief, but the void left by their parents were too great to fill. Their home, once full of laughter and warmth, now felt cold and empty. The day of the burial arrived, and the entire community came together to mourn with them. The village was filled with the wailing of women, and the sober beat of the talking drums echoed in the air. Akwuudo stood by her parents' grave, numbed with sorrow, her siblings clinging to her side. As their parents were lowered into the grave, it felt like a part of their heart was buried with them. They were now truly alone, orphans in a world that suddenly seemed much darker and more uncertain. That night, as the family gathered to grieve, her father's brother called a meeting. They were men of tradition, bound by the old ways, and it was their duty to decide the future of the children their brother had left behind. Akwuudo knew this meeting would determine what would happen next, but the thought of it filled her with dread. She clung to her siblings, promising them she would always take care of them no matter what. The elders sat in circles, their voice low and serious as they discussed the children's fate. After much deliberation, they came to a conclusion that Akwuudo feared. She would go and live with her aunt, who lived far away in another town, so she could continue her education in the university. As for her younger siblings, they would remain in the village and be split between two of her father's brothers. The decision, though practical in the eyes of the elders, felt like a cruel twist of fate for Akwuudo and her siblings. When Akwuudo heard the verdict, her heart sank. She could not bear the thought of being separated from her siblings, especially at a time when they needed one another the most. She felt as if the little family they had left was being torn apart piece by piece. Her siblings, still so young, looked up at her with tears-filled eyes, pleading silently for her to do something to keep them together. But she was powerless against the will of the elders, and that feeling of helplessness broke her. As the elders concluded the meeting, their decision was final. Akwuudo and her siblings retreated to their room, where they cried in each other's arms. The pain was unbearable, not just for the loss of their parents, but for the realization that their family would soon be scattered. They reminisced about the time when their parents would tell them bedtime stories, how their mother's voice had always been so soothing, and how their father's laughter could fill the entire house. They talked about the small things, the ways their mother would braid Akwuudo's hair on Sunday mornings, the way their father would lift them into the air when they had good grace. the meals they shared, and the warmth of their home. Now, all of this seemed like a distant memory, slipping further away with every passing moment. Akwuudo wiped her siblings' eyes even as her own heart felt like it was sinking. She promised them that no matter where they were, they would always be a family. They would find a way to see each other, to stay connected, even if the world seemed determined to pull them apart. But her words, though full of love, could not erase the fear in their eyes or the ache in her own heart. That night, as they lay huddled together, Akwuudo stayed awake long after her siblings had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling, wondering how life could change so drastically in such a short time. She whispered a prayer to the spirits of her parents, asking for their guidance, their protection. The path ahead seemed so uncertain, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on her young shoulders. All she could hope for now was that somehow they could make it through, and that the bond they share as siblings would be strong enough to withstand the separation that awaited them. She followed her auntie to the city with a heavy heart, but before leaving, Akwuudo made a solemn promise to her younger siblings. She knelt before them, hugging them tightly as they sobbed into her arms. She promised that she would study hard, finish school with good grades, and find a job that could allow her to come back for them. The pain of separation was deep, but the hope that she could one day reunite their family gave her the strength to carry on. With those words, she left for the city, carrying the weight of their dreams on her shoulder. The city was nothing like the village. It was loud, busy, and overwhelming. But Akwuudo held onto the belief that she was there for her future. Her aunts welcomed her at first with smiles and warm words, assuring her that she would be well taken care of. But after only a few days, Akwuudo began to see the cracks in the facade. Her aunt was not what she had appeared to be. She was cold and demanding, treating Akwuudo more like a servant than a niece. Every day, Akwuudo was tasked with cleaning the house, washing dishes, doing laundry, and running errands. Her hands, once soft from years of focus on her studies, became rough and sore. But the worst part was her aunt's restaurant, a small but busy place where she cooked food for customers. Akwuudo was forced to wake up at 3 a.m. every morning to help prepare the meal for the day, only to go to bed by midnight or sometimes even 1 a.m. There was no time for rest, no time to read, and certainly no time to dream. The promise of going back to school, which had been the only thing keeping her going, was slowly fading into the background. Each time Akwuudo tried to bring up the topic of her education, her auntie met her with scorn and irritation. "You think money grows on trees?" her aunt would sneer. "Do you think I am running a charity? School this, school that. Do you know how much it costs? You will be lucky if you see a classroom again." For days, Akwuudo held her tongue, swallowing her disappointment and pushing down the anger that bubbled inside her. She did not want to make her situation worse, but the weight of her broken dreams became harder to carry with each passing day. Eventually, she could no longer bear it. One evening, after a particular grueling day of work, she gathered the courage to confront her aunt. "Auntie, please," she began quietly, her voice trembling. "I know I am here to help, but when will I be able to go back to school? I passed my exams and I need to register for JAMB so I can get into the university. I promised my siblings." Her aunt's eyes flashed with irritation as she cut her off. "School? Who said anything about school? You think you can just walk into the university without money? You will need to work for me for 2 years, 2 whole years, so I can save enough money for your JAMB and tuition fees. If not, you can kiss your education goodbye." Akwuudo felt her heart sink. 2 years. How could she possibly wait for that long? Her dreams of getting an education, of reuniting with her siblings, seemed to slip further and further away. She had been devastated by the loss of her parents, but now the weight of her aunt's words crushed her even more. Yet, in the midst of her despair, something inside her refused to give up. She was determined to work hard, no matter how difficult it became, to find a way to fulfill her promise to her siblings. One evening, when Akwuudo returned home from the restaurant, she was greeted with an unusual sight. Her auntie, who was normally strained and demanding, had a bright smile on her face. Her uncle, who rarely acknowledged her presence, was equally cheerful. They were both acting strangely kind, treating her like a princess for the first time since she arrived in the city. "Akudo, my dear," her auntie said sweetly, "go and take your bath. You don't need to lift a finger tonight." Akudo froze, surprised by the unexpected kindness. She glared at her auntie, unsure of what had changed. "Auntie, is everything okay?" she asked hesitantly. Her auntie nodded, her smile even broader. "Yes, everything is more than okay. Today, I made a huge sale at the shop. It was the biggest one I've had in months, and I earned a lot of money. And your uncle here, he just secured a big contract that will bring in even more. We are celebrating tonight, toasting to our good fortune." Akwuudo was taken aback. She had never seen her auntie so happy, so full of joy. It made her uneasy, but she didn't want to ruin the moment. She nodded, thanking them, and quietly went to take her bath as instructed. When she returned, her auntie had prepared a meal and a drink for her. "Come, Akwuudo, join us," her auntie urged, handing her a glass. "Let's celebrate together." Akwuudo hesitated, staring at the glass. It looked like a drink she wasn't familiar with, and something about the night didn't feel right. But not wanting to offend her auntie and seem ungrateful, she took a small sip. The liquid was strong, bitter, and she could immediately sense that it contained alcohol. She rarely drank, and the taste made her stomach churn. "I don't think I should drink this, auntie," she said, placing the glass down. "It's too strong for me." Her auntie waved off her concern with a smile. "Nonsense. It's just a little celebration drink. You deserve it after all your hard work. Come on, have a little more." Despite her discomfort, Akwuudo didn't want to ruin the mood. She took another sip, then another, until the dizziness began to creep in. Her head spun and her vision blurred. She tried to stop, but her auntie insisted, persuading her to keep drinking until she finally passed out. The next morning, Akwuudo knew it was morning. She woke up in bed, her head pounding and her body aching. She had no recollection of what had happened the night before. Something felt off, but she couldn't quite place it. A sharp pain in her pelvis made her wince as she tried to get up. "Auntie," she called weakly, "I don't feel right. I don't know what's wrong." Her auntie, ever composed, came to her bedside and dismissed her concern with a casual wave of her hand. "It's probably just period cramps," she said, her voice smooth. "Take this pain relief. It will help ease the pain." Akwuudo accepted the pills, but something gnawed at her, a feeling of unease she couldn't shake. Her body didn't feel like her own, and the memory of the previous night was hazy, like a fog she couldn't see through. But when she tried to push for answers, her auntie brushed it aside, telling her to rest for the days and not to worry about her chores. "Take the day off, Akwuudo," her auntie said, patting her hand. "You need to rest. You can get back to work tomorrow." Though she tried to convince herself that nothing was wrong, Akwuudo couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her chest. Something had happened, something she couldn't remember, but it clung in her mind like a shadow she couldn't shake. A month after the strange night, Akwuudo's health began to deteriorate. At first, it was just exhaustion. She found herself sleeping more than usual, often waking up still feeling tired and weak. Her body felt heavier, her limbs sluggish. When she tried to express her concern to her auntie, she was met with dismissiveness. "Auntie, I don't feel well," Akwuudo said one morning, her voice shaky as she sat at the breakfast table. "I am always tired and I feel like something is wrong with me." Her auntie barely glanced at her, busy with her restaurant preparation. "Nonsense, Akwuudo. You are just overworking yourself, that's all. You will be fine, you're a strong girl." But day after day, her symptoms worsened. Her energy drained so quickly that simple tasks like sweeping or cooking left her breathless. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on her, and no matter how much she rested, it never went away. Then one fateful afternoon at the restaurant, as she was serving customers, her vision blurred and the world around her tilted. She felt the floor rushing up to meet her before everything went blank. When she regained consciousness, she was in a hospital bed, an IV drip in her arms, her head throbbing. Her auntie was standing beside her, speaking quietly with a doctor at the door. Akwuudo tried to recall how she had ended up there, but her mind was foggy. "Auntie," she called weakly. When her auntie approached her bedside, "What did the doctor say? What is wrong with me?" Her auntie gave her a light-lipped smile, patted her hand. "It's nothing serious, my dear, just malaria. The doctor said you're a bit run down, but you will be fine with some rest and medication." "Malaria?" Akwuudo asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. If it was just malaria, why didn't she feel like she was getting the right treatment? She knew what malaria felt like, and this wasn't it. But her auntie didn't offer any further explanation, and before Akwuudo would press her for more details, her auntie left to speak with the doctor again. Akwuudo laid in bed, her heart racing with worry. As the nurse came to adjust the IV and check her vitals, Akwuudo seized the opportunity to ask. "Nurse, please," she whispered, "what is wrong with me? What did the doctor really say?" The nurse hesitated for a moment, then smiled kindly at her. "Oh, my dear, you don't know?" Akwuudo shook her head, her anxiety rising. "Know what?" The nurse chuckled softly. "Congratulations, you are pregnant, almost 2 months along, I believe." Akwuudo's breath caught in her throat. "Pregnant?" she repeated, disbelief washing over her. "How can I be pregnant? I don't even have a man. How could this happen?" The nurse gave her a sympathetic look. "I don't know the details, but it's clear as day in the test. Your auntie didn't tell you?" Akwuudo's heart raced, her mind spinning. Pregnant without a man? How could she be pregnant? And why was her auntie hiding it from her? Her thought was a whirlwind of confusion, panic and shock. She lay there, trying to process the information while the nurse continued to speak. "Don't listen to your auntie," the nurse said gently, lowering her voice. "I heard her talking about abortion with the doctor. But my dear, you never know. That child could be a blessing for you. Don't rush into any decision." Akwuudo felt as though the world had crushed down around her. Her body, her life, it was spiraling out of control. She had no idea how she had become pregnant, what her auntie was hiding, or why this had all happened. Desperation crawled at her inside, and 1,000 questions flooded her mind. What had happened that night? What was her auntie planning? Was this all a part of a cruel plot? But as her auntie re-entered the room, Akwuudo kept her face calm, pretending as though she knew nothing. If this was the game they were playing, she would play along, at least until she could find out the truth. Inside, though her heart burned with anger, betrayal and fear, one way or another, she swore to uncover what had happened to her, no matter what it took. The next day, Akwuudo was discharged from the hospital. Her body still felt heavy with the weight of everything she had learned. As soon as they got home, her auntie, with her unusual composed demeanor, told her to stop working at the restaurant. "You will stay home from now on," her auntie said, almost too calmly. "No more running around. You will need to rest to take care of yourself. We will handle everything else." Akwuudo blinked in confusion. There was no anger, no scolding, no concern about the pregnancy. No one seemed remotely upset that she was having a child out of wedlock, something that would normally cause outrage in a typical Igbo family. The whole situation was unsettling, as if her auntie and uncle were hiding something deeper. Akwuudo could feel it, the airy calmness, the forced smile. It wasn't right. A few days later, Akwuudo went for a walk, hoping to clear her mind and make sense of the mess her life had become. She walked down a narrow street, her thoughts spiraling, replaying every moment of the past few months in her head. Suddenly, the scratching sound of brakes snapped her out of her daze. A car had almost hit her. The driver, a young man, jumped out of the car and rushed towards her, panic echoed across his face. "Oh my God, are you okay?" he asked breathlessly, scanning her for any injuries. Akwuudo nodded, still shaking but unharmed. "I'm fine," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Let's get you to the hospital, just to be sure," the young man insisted, guiding her into his car. At the hospital, after a few checks, the doctor confirmed she was fine. "Nothing is wrong with you," the doctor said, giving her a reassuring smile. But Akwuudo's mind was far from settled. As they left the hospital, the young man, whose name she learned was Chijioke, turned to her. "You seemed lost in thought back there. What's going on? Is there something bothering you? You can talk to me. Maybe I can help." Akwuudo hesitated, unsure if she could trust this stranger. But something about his concern felt genuine, and she had no one else to turn to. After a long silence, she slowly told him her predicament. She shared her confusion, her fear, and her desperate quest to uncover the truth about her pregnancy. Chijioke listened patiently, his brows furrowing as he processed her story. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "I believe you, Akwuudo," he said softly. "Something isn't right here, and I want to help you." Akwuudo looked at him, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. "But how?" she asked quietly. "Give me your number so I can contact you," Chijioke said. "I'll think of a way to help you get to the bottom of this." Akwuudo's face fell. "I don't have a phone," she admitted, feeling embarrassed. Chijioke's eyes softened. "That's okay," he said after a moment. "Let's go get you a phone. But you must be careful. Keep it on silent and hide it where no one can find it. We don't know who is watching." Akwuudo nodded, grateful for his kindness. They went to a nearby store where Chijioke bought her a simple phone. They exchanged numbers, and Chijioke gave her a firm promise to meet her the next day at a bar, where they could discuss their plans further. As they parted ways, Akwuudo clutched the phone tightly, her mind racing with possibilities. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. Hope that, with Chijioke's help, she might finally uncover the truth about what was happening to her. But beneath that hope was a lingering fear, a fear of what she might discover. That evening, when Akwuudo's auntie returned from work, she casually asked her how her day had gone, though there was little genuine interest behind the question. "It was okay," Akwuudo replied, hesitating a little, "but I feel bloated, like I swallowed a small ball." She glanced down at her stomach, which was now starting to show the faintest sign of pregnancy. Her discomfort was clear as she lifted her shirt slightly to reveal the change. "Auntie, look," she said, almost pleading. "Something isn't right." Her auntie barely spared a glance at her swollen stomach before waving her off dismissively. "Don't worry yourself, Akwuudo. It's probably just gas. You will be fine," she muttered before turning her attention to something else. There was no concern in her voice, no reassurance, nothing. That night, Akwuudo couldn't shake the eerie feeling that something was terribly wrong. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. As soon as the house was quiet, she reached for the phone Chijioke had given her and dialed his number. "Chijioke," she whispered when he picked up. "I talked to my aunt today about how I've been feeling, but she just ignored me. I even showed her my stomach and it's starting to show, but she acted like it was nothing." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Chijioke responded, his voice steady. "Akwuudo, I believe you are right. Something is definitely wrong. But don't worry, I'm working on a plan. Come out tomorrow when your auntie and uncle are at work. I want to give you something." The next morning, Chijioke spoke to his mother about the situation. She listened carefully, her face darkening with suspicion. Without needing much explanation, she quickly recognized that Akwuudo's auntie and uncle were likely up to something malicious. "Those two," Chijioke's mother muttered under her breath. "They've always been cunning. This poor girl is in danger. You must help her, Chijioke." Later that day, as soon as her auntie and uncle left for work, Akwuudo hurried out to meet Chijioke, her heart racing with anticipation. When she arrived, Chijioke handed her a small discreet recording device. "Hide this somewhere in your auntie's room," he said, speaking in a low, urgent tone. "We need to find out what they are up to. This recording will pick up everything." Akwuudo's eyes widened as she held the tiny device in her hand. "How do I use it?" Chijioke patiently explained how to install it and how to turn it on without being noticed. "Just make sure it's hidden well, somewhere they won't think to look," he instructed. "It will record everything." Akwuudo nodded, grateful for his help. "Thank you, Chijioke. I will do it as soon as I get back." With the recorder safely tucked into her pocket, Akwuudo hurried back home, her heart pounding in her chest. She waited until she was sure the coast was clear before sneaking into her auntie's room. Carefully, she found a small, hidden spot behind a dresser and placed the recorder there, just as Chijioke had instructed, her hands trembling slightly as she turned it on, knowing that whatever secret her auntie and uncle were hiding, they were about to be exposed. That night, when her auntie and uncle returned from work, Akwuudo tried to maintain her composure, though her mind was racing. She had hidden the recorder in her auntie's room earlier and was anxious to hear what it captured. Later, when her auntie and uncle retired for the evening, Akwuudo quietly went to her own room and listened to the recording. What she heard chilled her to the bone. What Akwuudo overheard on that recording was far worse than she ever imagined. That twisted secret that would shake anyone to their core. Her heart pounded as she listened to the sinister plan her auntie and uncle had been quietly plotting behind closed doors. How could the people she trusted, the ones who took her in, have done something so cruel? The betrayal cuts deep, but the horror doesn't end there. What exactly had they done to her? And what more do they have in store? But this is just the beginning. What lies ahead will leave you speechless. What twisted games are they playing, and how will Akwuudo escape from their clutches? Can she outsmart them before it's too late? Or is she already caught in a web she can't escape? The answers are awaiting in part 2, where the tensions will rise and the stake will get even higher. Stay tuned to find out how far Akwuudo's auntie and uncle are willing to go, and if she will survive their malicious plan.